Well, let's see if that's any better. Just waiting for Matt to join us. Sorry about that. I'm having an absolute nightmare with computers and laptops and internet and whatever else. Just wants to annoy me at the minute. So if anyone wants to do a GoFundMe and buy me a new computer and some better internet, be great. So hopefully Martin's going to be able to join me in a second. So apologies about this. I can see someone saying hi to me, but I don't know who it is, I'm afraid. But hello, whoever you are. Nice to see you, or not see you. But so it's Monday, and obviously my technology just doesn't want to work with me today. So there we go. I'm hoping Martin's going to be able to join me because I'm really excited about hearing what he's got to say. And I think it'll be really interesting. And somebody's waving at me. Hello, wavy person. So I've sent Martin the link, so I'm hoping that he's going to be able to join me. Or at least I'm saying I've sent Martin the link, but for some reason it's not showing up as sent now. So, you know, just you've just stuck with me talking to you now, which is nice. Come on! And I'm going to talk to you about my career for a little bit. So my career, while we're waiting, my career started when I was 16 years old, and I got a little Saturday job working at Hartlepool United on the turnstiles to earn a little bit of extra pocket money. And then I went through college and I had a place at university to go to Northumbria and study computers. And basically, I got my place and then I was like, do I want to do this? Is this what I want to do? And I wasn't entirely sure. And I felt like I was just going to university because that's what I felt had to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. University works for some people. Hi, Martin, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, loud and clear from the university, yes.
Yeah, can you hear me now? I was just telling everyone about how I ended up in my career while I was trying to get in.
Oh, right.
So I had a place at uni to do computers at Northumbria.
Okay. I was just asking which one.
Then, can't remember now, that was 20 odd years ago. To business computers, and then I thought, I don't really know if I want to do this, and I'm just going to end up spending a lot of money and ended up in a ton of debt to do something that I'm not entirely sure I want to do. And I was already working Saturdays at the football club on the turnstiles. So, and a job came up in reception at the football club, so I applied for that. Yeah. And then that was when I was, 18? And I was there until I was there 13 years. A job, ended up in that career, left for a year, went to work for a property company in Middlesbrough, and then I went back to the football club working for their charity arm, and then I started working with some lovely young carers who I know some of them are watching, so hello my young carers. Started working with my lovely young carers, and then when a job came up at Hartlepool Carers, I just thought it's it, and I applied for it, and I've been there since December, and it's been completely and utterly not what it was supposed to be, what was the pandemic and stuff, but it's been an experience. So we're going to try this again now. Yes, Emily, you. So we're going to try this again, and I've got the lovely Martin here with me, and Martin is a carer himself, and he's also just a generally lovely guy, one of my favourite people. Do parkrun on a Saturday morning with him, or at least we used to. Used to. And today he's going to talk to us about his career in sports science. So, Martin, were you like me didn't have a clue what you wanted to do, or was sports science something you always wanted to do?
No, I sort of fell into sports science. I liked sport at school.
Yeah.
I liked rugby. I was the right shape for rugby, so I very much like that. But then when I went to sixth form, I went to Breton School first. Then they closed that down, and then I went to Hartlepool Sixth Form College. And while I was doing my A levels there, I got a job at Millhouse Leisure Centre as a lifeguard and a fitness instructor, and I started doing fitness qualifications. All my personal training stuff, weight training stuff, things. I got into the side of the fitness side of things, and then after that, I wanted to still play rugby. I used to play rugby at West Hartlepool, and they were doing quite well in them days, Premiership and everything. And I had aspirations. I was going to be a rugby player. I never was. I was never that good. But then a job came up. One of my colleagues at West Hartlepool Club got a job as a sports development officer, and I got a job as a sports development officer, Hartlepool 2, and did that for 3 years while I just messed about playing rugby. And it was just wonderful. But during that, it gave me the opportunity to learn more about sport and fitness and gain a lot of coaching qualifications. Now, after that, I applied to go to university. There was only, when you apply to go to university, you get 5 choices. I used 5 choices, but I put on my personal statements that I wanted to go to Loughborough University, because that's where the best rugby team was, really. So I put on there on my form, I want to go to Loughborough. Luckily enough, I got accepted by Loughborough, but turned down by everyone else because I wanted to go to Loughborough. So there's a top tip. Don't put all the eggs in one basket. I was just very lucky. Now, when Loughborough University is known for sport, and it's the world. It is the world's #1 sports university in every world ranking. And when I went there, a lot of athletes go a couple of weeks early to do pre-season training, fitness testing, things like that. And I went early, and I used to be quite fit in them days, and flexible and stuff. I used to be able to do the splits and things. And another thing about going to university is sometimes they have a few parties going on. And I can remember going to something called a barn dance. Now, when I went to the barn dance, I was dancing and showing off like young men do a lot, and after a couple of Diet Cokes as well. Yeah. And I landed in the splits and ripped my hamstring muscle in half. Ended up in wheelchair and crutches, and for 6 months, and the end of my rugby career. So while I was at university, I thought, I was there to play rugby. I thought, right, I may as well start reading books. So I started reading all the studying books. I thought, I may as well read this. And then you sort of fall into it. I did a degree, and then I did another degree, and then I did another degree, then I did research. And that's how I fell into sports science, really, because I got injured.
Yeah, well, it's sort of not a good thing at the time, but then it sort of worked out. Way. Everything happens for a reason.
It does.
But it's funny how many people don't end up falling into a job that they didn't expect to fall into.
Absolutely. The job chooses you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So what did you study at uni? I know you've got an undergraduate and postgraduate.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to hedge my bets at the beginning, and the most popular course at Loughborough is physical education, sports science, and recreation management. So I thought that I've got options there. I could become a PE teacher, or I could become a sports scientist, this thing which I didn't really know that much about, but I learned a lot. Or I could go into recreation management, come back and, work at Millhouse Leisure Centre as the manager or something like that. I thought about those areas. But while I was there, because I wasn't playing rugby and dancing at barn dances anymore, I was studying, and I was studying hard. I started to get into the sports science area. Now, most people have probably not heard of sports science.
Sports
science. Yeah, sports science can be broken down into 3 basic areas. I did have a lovely PowerPoint put together with lots of pictures of wonderful athletes and things.
Do you have a
I'll try one more time of share screen. See what happens, and I will just put this up. I'm trying to put it up, but
You never know if it's going to work or not.
yeah, no. Is that working? Can you see it?
No.
No.
Oh, lovely.
Never mind. Never mind.
I don't want to
Okay then.
again.
Right, we're going to lose again. Okay, sports science, 3 basic areas. There's biomechanics, there is psychology, or sports psychology they call it, and there's also physiology. Now, physiology is the best because that's what I am. I'm a physiologist. But I'll talk about the other 2 because they'll tell me off if I didn't. But I'll give you some examples of what these things are. For example, biomechanics. That looks at how the mechanics, how physics, engineering can be applied to the body. For example, if anyone's interested in running or you watch athletics, if you look at all these fancy shoes that people wear, if you look at a sprinter's shoe, and I did have a picture of one, but I don't. But imagine if this is a shoe. Imagine that this is a running shoe. I'll just go and get a running shoe for you.
You've got plenty of them.
I have. Yeah. Right. Okay, Dada, I've got a nice pretty running shoe, which I've got for park run, but we haven't been doing. Okay, so let's have a think. A sprinter, from biomechanics through research, we know that a sprinter runs exclusively on their toes here. So if you look at the bottom of a sprinting spike, it'll have spikes just at the front, and there'll be no heel because they never put the heel down. It's all on their toes. Now, if you look at something like an 800-meter runner or a 1500-meter runner, they've got slightly longer spikes there. That's for biomechanics knows this because their foot goes on the ground longer than a sprinter does. A sprinter, when you're running really fast, you want your foot on the ground as little as possible. So it's hit the ground, back up. But if you're doing middle distance running, those toes go down and the mid of the foot too. So they'll have spikes there and they'll have a little bit of a heel. Now, I did have a picture of the fancy latest Nike trainer, which has got a massive heel and massive forefront. And this is what people use and they would have been wearing yesterday in the London Marathon. Now, this Percentage Plus Nike trainer, the latest one, has got a lot of heel stuff and a lot of forefront because if you run fast, you go on both. But it's got carbon fiber in the middle and it only lasts for about 100 kilometers, so that's 2 marathons and a park run, really. And then you've got to throw them away. And if you can get hold of them, it costs about £260. But apparently, they will knock about a minute of time off you. So that's biomechanics. Okay.
Hey, if anyone wants to know what they need to buy me for Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. See, yeah, I think £260 trainers. Right, the next one. I said biomechanics is sports psychology. Now, sports psychology is really interesting, and it's used a lot by footballers, rugby players, golfers, etc. In the past, when I've been working with players, and I'll talk about this a bit later, hopefully we'll get a chance. One of the teams I worked with, I was very lucky enough to work with in the 90s, was the England rugby team. Now, when we worked with the England rugby team, I'll tell you the people, the all young carers, you've never heard of these people. But there was one young lad I can remember doing some fitness testing on, a guy called Johnny Wilkinson, who was coming up, and he was, a really good player. Now, if you don't know rugby, I suggest you learn about it. But if you don't know rugby, one of the things that happens is you've got these big H-shaped posts, and you get a chance to kick a ball across. Now, Johnny Wilkinson was the guy who was the best one in the world at kicking the ball across these posts. Now, if you've ever seen someone, and since I don't have any images of it, I'll do a demonstration. If you ever see someone playing rugby kick, or Johnny Wilkinson, he used to put the ball down, put his hands together, and look like this, and do that. Now, what was he doing when he does those things? First of all, in a game of rugby, when you generally bumping into each other and knocking each other around, sports scientists would call that being highly aroused or angry, if that happens. Now, if you're really angry, you can't do something which takes a lot of coordination, such as kick a ball through. So, for example, if he was in the bottom of a ruck or a maul and someone just punched him, and you said, "Oh, come on, chap, don't do that," or words to that effect on a rugby field, you would then the referee would see it, hopefully would see it, say, right, you've got, you know, a goal kick. You can kick against a goal, you've got a penalty. If you're in front of a 70,000 crowd or 75,000 crowd, which you have at, say, Twickenham, for example, they can be quite intimidating with everyone clapping and cheering. And if someone just punched you in the face, you've got to try and calm down. There's no point being really angry, because sometimes if you get really angry yourself, you can't think straight. So you need to calm yourself down. So one of the things we used to teach them, well, not me, because I'm the physiologist, the sports psychologist taught him, was put his hands together. Now, what you can just hit him and he's got to kick this ball across there to win the game. Put his hands together and look at his thumbs. Just by looking at his thumbs there, if you're looking, concentrating your thumbs, you're not thinking about anything else and you forget about everything. So that's to calm the mind down. The next thing he does is to do this with his eyes. Look at the ball. Look at the ball. Now, what he's doing there is drawing an imaginary line between where he's going to kick the ball and where the ball's going to end up. Sorry, you can't see my finger. Where the ball's going to end up there. Now, the posts, he doesn't look at the posts. He looks where the line is. The line goes through the middle of the post, which is great, but you don't look at the post because that can put you off. Now, in his training, the sports psychologist got him to, because he did lots and lots of training, and that's the difference between a world-class player and the rest of us, is that they train a lot more, and no matter how good they are, they still practice the basics over and over again. So that's a really important tip to learn from Johnny. What he used to do is imagine there was a woman sat in the stand in Twickenham or wherever he was playing called Doris, and that was her name. So he called her Doris. Now, Doris was eating an ice cream. Now, that line he used to draw was a line between the ball and Doris's ice cream. So all he used to think about was, I'm going to kick that ball along this imaginary line and knock Doris's ice cream over. Now, if you're thinking about all of that and you practice doing that, Doris's ice cream, you're not thinking about, oh, this is the World Cup final, or this is this is the final. If I miss this, we're going to get knocked out of the World Cup, or I'm going to go knocked out of the then 5 nations, the 6 nations, going to knocked out there. You forget all about that. So in training, he has this imaginary woman called Doris. You see, try and kick that ice cream across. So that's an example of sports psychology. I had a sports psychologist when I was a rugby player, and what I used to do, sometimes I used to throw the ball in. So if I was a bit aggressive, angry, and I needed to relax, the sports psychologist said, right, on each of these balls, you've got a place where you pump the air in and the air goes in. So I used to pick the ball up, move it around until I looked at it. And that's how I looked at it, and that got me to calm down, ready to go. So that's sports psychology. Okay, if you're still listening, it's hard to know with people there. If you're still listening, we've got physiology. Now, physiology is that's how your body, your heart, your lungs, your muscles, all your fitness elements, what that does. Now, as a sports scientist, as a physiologist, I'm just thinking. I think I may have took a picture of something of my presentation on here. That may help me a bit later. As a sport physiologist, you work with people on this. Now, that can be fitness testing to see how strong their heart is, how strong their lungs are, how flexible they are, how much body fat they've got. Now, as an applied sports scientist, you can work with athletes, for example, to lose body fat. You could work with athletes to improve their cardiovascular fitness, the lungs, etc., to get stronger. You work with those. You do fitness testing in the field. So, for example, at Twickenham, well, we didn't used to do it in Twickenham, but outside Twickenham, you've got the training pitches. Or in the past, I've worked with Middlesbrough Football Club is another example. England netball team is another example of people I've worked with. Newcastle Falcons rugby. Sometimes you go on the pitch and you put all your equipment there and you have people running zigzags around and timing them, see how fast they are. You do things such as the bleed test. You may have heard of that. One of my colleagues at Loughborough invented that. A guy with a brilliant name called Roger Ramsbottom. And you never forget that name. He invented that. So that's one of the examples of physiology. Now, as a sports scientist, it's okay if I keep talking?
Yeah.
As a sports scientist, you tend to do 3 things. You tend to teach, you tend to do research and you tend to do the practical stuff. Now, if we've got time, I'll tell you a little bit about what I did on what I do in all those three areas. The teaching side of it is really interesting. I love working with people, generally young people if they've got university and teaching. And I taught at a number of universities. I've lectured at Loughborough, Newcastle, Teesside University, just down the road. And now I'm based at Durham University. Enjoy teaching there. I taught undergraduate, postgraduate, research students. And one of the best things about the teaching side of things, as well as seeing people turn up when they graduate with their black cap on and things like that, and it's wonderful you clap them on the stage and everyone dresses like Harry Potter and stuff. Apart from that, you get invited to give talks and lectures around the world. And on my presentation, I just remind us, because have you got anyone got Time Hop on their phone? Now, as a parent, Time Hop's wonderful because it reminds me when I used to do stuff before I had kids. Now, Time Hop is
cute.
yeah, exactly. And one thing that popped up today in Time Hop, on this day 8 years ago, no, actually on this day 5 years ago, I was in Jakarta in Indonesia giving a talk on physiology of the brain.
Wow.
So you get to actually go around the world, and I counted up. I've give talks in over 40 different countries. I've give talks, keynote lectures and conferences in Beijing, Chicago, Singapore, Bali, all over the place. So you get a chance to travel too. Hence, I like traveling. I've got a map behind me and map of the countries you go to and things. So that's the teaching side, which is wonderful. Next side of things is the research side of things. Now, my specialism in research is what happens to the body when you get too hot. Now, I like heat. I like hot countries. I like being warm, and so I researched that. And one thing happens when you get hot, you get thirsty and you sweat a lot more. So I did a lot of research in that area. And two things I'd like to tell you about, two of the research projects I did. Many years ago, I worked when I was at Loughborough. We got a contract for something called SmithKline Beecham, who's a big pharmaceutical company, and they give us lots of money to look at energy drinks and to see if energy drinks work. Now, there's a difference in energy drinks between sports energy drinks and those little silver cans with blue and silver on and things. They're not energy. Yeah, they're just full of caffeine, and they don't give you energy. They don't, and keep away from those. Those are not healthy. But sports energy drink is different, and so we got this stuff from SmithKline Beecham, and in a study, what we do studies. We've got lots of athletes, and we got them in the hall where they invented the bleep test, and we invented a different type of test, because if you play something like rugby or football, hockey, those type of sports, what you tend to do is you do a sprint, then you do a jog, then you do a run, then you do a sprint, then you do a jog and a run. So we came up with something called the Loughborough Intermittent Shuttle Test that mimics how far you would run when you play sport. So we did that, and then what we did is we got people to do that. Then at the end of it, we got them to run 85% of their maximum speed until they fell over, basically. During the test, we give half of all these athletes who were doing it an orange drink that was called Lucozade Sport. We give the other half of the drink, which looked like Lucozade Sport, but wasn't. We tried different levels of sugar, because the sugars that gives you energy. And what we found over lots of different testing, that it needs 6.4% sugar in there. 6.8% doesn't work. 6.2% doesn't work. 80% definitely doesn't work. And 0% doesn't work either. It's a very definite thing. So after that, they start launching Lucozade Sport. Now, there used to be some famous adverts long before you were born, with a guy called Alan Shearer, who's a footballer. And he used to be on the advert, used to be on the treadmill, and him running on a treadmill in the gym. And a woman coming around cleaning up, saying, "Have you finished yet?" And said, "Lucozade Sport, you can go 33% further with the Lucozade Sport." Now, what that's based on is the study I was involved in, where once they'd done this intermittent running test, we stopped everyone. Then they did 85% of their maximum speed until they fell over. Those which had Lucozade Sport ran an extra 33% longer than those who didn't have Lucozade Sport. Now, that equates to 2 minutes 11 seconds, but when you saw Alan Shearer, it looked like it was going for half an hour. It was 2 minutes 11 seconds difference. But if you think about football, how many goals are scored in the last 2 minutes or an extra time? And yeah, exactly. And so, you know, the carbohydrate, the sugar is really important. And also your brain only works with sugar, doesn't use any other fuel apart from sugar. So you need your sugar levels quite high. So that was one study. Another study I did, which I found very interesting. One of my postgraduate students who was doing his doctorate came up to me and said his mother used to tell him that on a hot day, you may have heard this yourself, it's better to have a hot cup of tea to cool you down than a cold drink.
I have heard that.
Yeah, a lot of people heard that. In fact, the QILs on Radio 2 were talking about this a few months ago, and I had to contact Zoe Ball on Radio 2 and put them right. They came to me, and my student came up to me and said, well, what do you think? I said, nah, rubbish. So we did the tests. I had something called environmental chamber, which is like a big room, which we can make really hot or really cold, or put you anywhere on the planet, wind and freezing and stuff. And we give people different beverage tests, and we had these things, these special pills, which you swallow, and it tells you the temperature of inside the stomach, which is really clever. Wonderful. The worst part of that job is you've got to collect these at the end. So yeah, exactly. So it's not all glamour doing this stuff. And what we found was, if you have a hot cup of tea on a hot day, it'll just make you warmer. So in a hot day, you need a cold drink, and on a cold day, you need a hot drink. So those are two bits of research I've done. Sorry?
Which makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. But people like to cling on to these old wives' tales. It was interesting, you know, and people say, yeah, but it makes you sweat. No, it'll just make you hotter. So that's the research element side of things. And but the real fun end is working with the athletes. And actually, before we go on to working with the athletes thing, I'll just try and put this on again. I had yesterday. What I wanted to do is, if anyone does play sport, sports science has come up with some basic truisms that a bit like make sense there about your hot drink when you cold drink. But not many people actually do it. So I'm going to go through a list of things which sports science physiology and some of these studies I've been part to, or some of my colleagues have done, and you can just take away today and you can start improving your own sport.
We've got footballers. We've got a judo. Is it
judo player?
British judo.
Very good. I won't upset them. I'll throw me around. Right. Okay. First thing is, a lot of people say during a warm up you need to stretch, which is right. It's right. But what we found in the lab is that if you do a stretch where you stick your leg out in front and you bend down and just hold that static stretch like you should, if you're doing power events such as sprinting, that will make you worse. So never do a static stretch if you can do sprinting or power stuff. Next one along, beetroot juice. If you want to improve your 5K time on a park run, Sarah, have some beetroot juice.
Right, okay.
That will guarantee to take at least 2 or 3 seconds off your time. If you drink it the night before and on the morning, it really makes a difference. There's a compound in beetroot juice which helps to carry the oxygen around in the body.
Definitely need to give that a try.
The original research for this is for helping people who've had heart attacks and heart disease, and people who need ventilators. And what they found was, by giving them beetroot juice, that could actually help them that didn't need as much oxygen. So somebody thought, well, you could do it with some sports people too, so you could do that. Next thing, if you've had a hard training session playing football, rugby, doing your judo, you need to replace the sugar in your muscles, which is called glycogen. You need to replace that. But you've only got 20 minutes to 40 minutes to do that. So if you finish a hard training session, then go home, have a shower, watch EastEnders or something, and then go to have your food. You've missed the window. you need to replace those carbohydrates in your body within 20 to 40 minutes as soon as you've finished. Now, if you get a little bit of protein in there, that can help too. Okay, what else was I talking about? This is an interesting one. 6 packs. A lot of athletes like 6 packs. And when I worked for Middlesbrough Football Club, you couldn't get the players to do any training apart from ab work. Because just in the off chance, they actually scored a goal once.
And then they could
yeah, they put it over their head. And even though the FA started banning that, they could do that. Now, there's a lot of nonsense around about 6 packs. Now, I won't embarrass the young lads by showing off mine, by taking my top off. I'll just talk about it here. There's a lot of nonsense mentioned about training for 6 packs. First of all, it's not 6 packs, it's a 1 pack. It's actually 1 muscle. Even though it looks like it's 6 or even 8 different muscles, it's all connected together. So it's like your bicep. If you've done a bicep curl and then you move your arm, you can't just move one part of your bicep and the other part of your bicep. You're doing all of it at the same time. So remember that. The other thing is, the next thing is that's made out of skeletal muscle. Same as your biceps, same as your triceps, same as your glutes, your quads, everything else. Your abs, your rectus abdominis is made the same thing. Now, you wouldn't go to the gym and do biceps every single day, 7 days a week. It would be ridiculous. You wouldn't. But we seem to want to do that with abs. No, the abs need rest as well. And the final point I want to say about abs, rectus abdominis, attaches to your spine and your hips and your ribs. It goes down your hips. They do not cross your legs. So I've seen so many ab workouts where you're waving your legs up and down, moving your legs around. It doesn't work your abs. You can feel it in your abs, but your abs are working isometrically, not moving, just to so your back doesn't, your spine doesn't snap. But it's not an effective way of doing your abs. To do your abs, you need to do like a sit-up type motion, and you can do loads of variations of that, but none of you waving your legs around. You shouldn't be doing that. And the final thing I want to say about what we found out from research, something called VO2 max, which is the max amount of oxygen you can take in. A lot of people who've got watches and things talk about this. That is 80 to 96% genetically determined. So the most important thing is, if you want to be world champion, choose your parents carefully. Okay. Enough about that. If I want to just talk a little bit about some of the sports people I've worked with.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, have we got time, or am I going on too long?
No, chat away. It's fascinating to me.
Okay. So some of the things we've done in the past, for example, the England rugby team. What happened with there is Dave Redden, who was the guy in charge of the fitness and the sports science at the time in the 90s. They used to be based in Loughborough when I was based down in Loughborough and doing sports science. So we used to get all the players as part of the selecting of the team. They used to come together. Now, we used to do something called a battery of tests, all different type of tests: strength tests, sprint tests, multiple sprint tests, endurance tests, and the bleep test as well, which we use a lot. Now, if anyone has done the bleep test, it's really interesting from a psychological point of view. When you run from one, you start it and goes start of level 1, and you run, it goes beep, 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 and you run along, then it goes beep, everyone gets there too early, they wait for the beep, and everyone giggles. And then you keep doing that and getting faster and faster and faster. Now, the bleep test hurts. It hurts for everyone.
It does.
But what happens is, when you're running along, you get some of the lads who are a bit bravado. Oh, this is easy. It's no problem. They're joking on. Then when they get about level 6 or 7, the jokes stop because they haven't got enough oxygen to be able to do that. But then everyone's hurting. But nobody wants to be the first one to drop out. So what you find is, once one person drops out, someone else who's really hurting will run one or two more lengths, then drop out. But even more interesting to that is, you will look along, if you're doing it with a group of people, who do you think I can be as fit as? Who can beat me? Who I can beat? So you have your targets. And if they keep running, you want to try and beat them. So what we used to do is, for example, one of the humorous named positions in rugby is a hooker. And we had a choice of 4 or 5 hookers. So we used to put all the hookers running against each other to see who was the fittest. And because they all wanted to play for England, they used to really push each other. Now, if we put all the hookers, which are like chunky blocks, up against the wings, who are like a bit thinner, you know, or the mid, or like a back row forward who can run for days, there wouldn't be any contest. So you put light for light next to each other to build a competition up there. So that's the type of thing we should do for that. Another interesting job I had work with, it was the British people going into something called the Marathon des Sables. Now, if you think parkrun's bad, which it can be, it's seeing through that wind. Particularly pushing a double buggy, it can. Marathon des Sables, if you think like yesterday's London Marathon was hard, this is a 155-mile race across the Sahara Desert, across the dunes. Now, you do it over 6 days, you'll have 1 day rest and that, but you have a long day, which is about 56 miles. The route changes and the distance changes each year, but you're running with all your kit. The only thing that athletes get is 9 litres of water. Everything else they have to carry. So you've got your home comforts that you want to take, including your food. But also, if you carry it, it can be quite heavy. If anyone's done the Duke of Edinburgh Award, when you first put your backpack on, you think, oh, that's really heavy. Then it gets lighter as you go on. But if you're running in this race, it's really horrible to do it, particularly in temperatures up to 42 degrees. So I used to work with athletes to say, well, what can they get in there? So we used to get like toothbrushes, and we used to file it down, cut the toothbrush down, or those iPod Nanos. We used to file it down to make it as light as possible. The other thing we found out as well is that we want food which is light, but it's got a lot of calories in. So you get lots of calories. And the best food are having loads and loads of calories in, which is light and weighs nothing, is pot noodle. So I used to send all the British team off with pot noodles, so because it was really, really light to carry. The other thing you used to do as well is your feet. You can either put like rubber around them to stop the sand going, or you can have the sand to go in to cause blisters. Now, you can have one choice or the other. You can either have really hot feet or blisters, and it's up to the athlete which one they want. They're going to get both of them. But your feet swell. For example, one guy who started off the race, I can remember a few years ago, with size 9 feet. By the end of the week, he had size 11 feet because your feet expand. So one way to try and counteract that is to soak your feet, but you're not going to take a bubble. You're not going to bowl. Soak your feet in. So you take one of the things I came up with was take a shower cap. You know, the free shower caps you get from your hotel and that. Take that and you do 1 foot at a time, soak it in, and then dry it and do the next one. So you look at ways of doing that, and you know that there's some crazy sports out there. I've worked with a guy called Alan Hinks, who's probably Britain's greatest climber, and he very famously a few years ago he's been up Everest loads of times, and he's one of only a handful of people who've climbed all 14 mountains in the world above 8,000 meters. Now, the important thing about 8,000 meters is you can't get a helicopter above 8,000 meters. So if you fall over, you're dead. So it's called the death zone. It's right, because it can be very scary. Now, he had an issue with his back. He was at Everest Base Camp a few years ago, and they have wonderful food. They have chapatis, which can be quite dusty with flour. And he sat in his tent, and he had the chapati, and he sneezed because of the flour when it was nose, put his back out, really damaged his back. That he had to, that was a real problem. And he damaged it that he may not be able to climb again. At this point, he was on 12 of the 14 mountains, 14, and he wanted to get to those 2. So he was sent to me to try and strengthen his back and get his back right and that. And lo and behold, we got his back strong, and he did it. He went up there. I've worked with some wonderful people in the Olympics, Paralympics, all sorts of different sports. But I have to say to the people who are listening, all these wonderful people, and I've worked with some people I've been, I've been really shocked to be able to work with. One of my favorites was a runner called Paula Radcliffe a few years ago, and that was wonderful work with her because she was a very good runner. But these are amazing people. But what you do as a carer is more amazing. It really is. None of these people, as amazing as they are, they've got this mental toughness. But what you guys are doing, juggling school, juggling caring, juggling all these things, you're developing skills which are way beyond your level. They really are. You develop all these skills, this mental toughness, the ability to keep going when things are bad. One of the biggest differences between some of the top athletes and the rest of them is something called mental toughness. There's a lot of research in sports psychology. And if you look at these things, the breaking out resilience, looking at positive when things are negative, you're looking at the bright side of things. Yeah, you're in a situation you wouldn't want to be in, but you look to make things work. And that's what these top athletes do. When you're on a pitch and you're 5 points down, you've got 10 minutes to go, you got to look at ways and be positive, think, right, we can get through this. And you're learning all these skills that these top athletes have got or employ a sports psychologist to give. And you're gaining all these things. So your training for life and your career, your tenacity, you're going to have maturity, thinking skills, problem solving skills to be able to push yourself further. So when you go to university or you go into a job, you go into different careers from there, you're going to have skills that the people you're up against for those promotions won't have.
Yeah,
so
completely.
That is amazing. Now, I know I've banged on far too long there, but is there any more questions?
Oh, honestly, right up my street. Can I just ask you one question then? Anyone who's wanting to go sort of along the sports side career, what one piece of advice would you give them?
One piece of advice. If you want to become a sports scientist, it is very competitive because it's dead easy to become a professional footballer. In a squad, you could have 25 players. You've only got one sports scientist.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 25 times harder. However, if you work hard and you're passionate about it, you can do it. So you need to work hard and study and learn. Now, it's great because even if I never made it to play for England, I got to work with the England team, and even though I didn't become a professional footballer, I got to work with, well, Borough's a bad example, but, I got to work with Leeds, for example, a few years ago. One of my colleagues worked for Leeds. You can work with these top athletes and you can get to travel. You go to the Olympics, you go to the Commonwealth Games, you go to World Championships, and you go around the world and do this. And the payback is wonderful. And think about it. A lot of people sometimes work hard in a job they don't enjoy to pay the bills. So at the weekend, they do what Sarah and I do. They do some sport and parkrun like that. Imagine being a sports scientist, that your day job is your hobby.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, if you love sport, you work in that, you never have to work a day again. Now, we didn't get to it, but after a while, as lecturing, I went to the dark side of management. I was a dean at Teesside University for a decade, and then children came along, and now I'm the management of Durham University. I still keep my hand in. I'm working with some GB triathletes at the moment, and I advise them. They've got coaches and things, but the coach and the athlete come to me, and I speak to them daily. So, right, how was your training? What happened here? Let's have a look at your stats and your heart rate, and I nudge in the direction. So I keep my hand in because, and to be honest, I'm not getting paid for that. I just enjoy it because it is a fun thing to do. And because I've got children, I can't run anymore anyway. So I live vicariously through other people's benefits. But you've got to work hard. But if anyone can work hard, it's you guys. You've got time management to do stuff. Now, when we have students at university coming through, if I saw a student who was a carer and they had a part-time job to support themselves compared to a student who all they did was study, my money would be on the student who was the carer and the part-time job getting a better degree than the other student, because the other student will waste time.
Yeah.
As a carer, you don't have time to waste. Every minute's precious. So you use your time and you drive. You got that drive to get there. So work hard.
Work hard. Keep it up, guys. Thank you, man. It's been so lovely chatting to you. Has anyone got any questions before we disappear off?
I'm getting away with people's tea. That's not a good thing.
Oh, well, thank you, man. It's really, really interesting, and I'm going to try my beetroot out, so I'll let you know how I get on with that. And
one thing I should say about beetroot is it does give in other ways. When you go to the toilet, You know, hashtag peeing with rainbows. Yeah. Just remember that.
Yeah, I will do. And I'm sure this has been really useful to some of our young carers. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Okay, thanks for having me. Okay, good luck, everyone. Good luck.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.